Opta suggests Spurs are in a false Premier League position. Richarlison could be sold in January with a move back to Everton a possible outcome. And is Thomas Frank already under pressure at Spurs after two lacklustre performances in a row? Here are your daily Tottenham news headlines. Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name's Craig and here are your daily Tottenham news headlines where I'll be going through all the latest news, rumours and reports. If you're watching on YouTube and are not already as yet subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. Like, share and comment below. And if you're listening on an audio platform, please do hit that follow button and leave a review if you can. Okay, let's get into it. Football 365 report that Tottenham and Chelsea are in a slightly false position in the Premier League according to their underlying numbers. If we use Opta's X points model, Tottenham would be way down in 13th place, while Chelsea and Bournemouth would be in mid-table. For comparison, Arsenal are exactly where they should be in first place. They are clearly the Premier League's best side, and Liverpool are in line with their underlying numbers in fourth. The only other clubs in the correct position are Everton and West Ham. In fact, according to the algorithm the model uses, Tottenham are overperforming by 7 places and should actually be a lot lower down the table. We asked last week about the actual point of Spurs because they do appear to be something of a muddled mess. They should seemingly be 13th rather than 6th, with even the mess of Nottingham Forest creating better chances across the season. But they are the team most overperforming on their XG, with João Paulinho, Richarlison and Brendan Johnson all far exceeding their individual expected numbers this season. It's telling that we would absolutely have guessed that Spurs would be top of the list. They just don't feel like a team who should be a point behind Liverpool. An upcoming Tottenham revamp in the final third could result in a big money forward being sold, and Team Talk understands Everton are ready to swoop. Richarlison signed from Everton in 2022 for 60 million including add-ons and is among those labouring in recent weeks, and we understand Everton will get the chance to resurrect their interest in the Brazilian in January. The Toffees are keen to bring in a new forward into the squad and are currently exploring options. Ideally, they would want somebody already in the Premier League, and one of the names they have considered previously is Richarlison. Sources at Spurs believe there is a growing possibility he will become available on the market in 2026. He started the season in promising fashion, but as his form has begun to tail off at a time where Spurs are now drawing up their own plans on how to reinvent their attack for the second half of the season. Dominic Solanke is making some progress in his recovery process and they have missed him as a focal point in the side. There is a probability that Randall Kolo-Muani gets his first Premier League start soon. The next big game is a big one for Spurs as they travel to Everton, and it could also prove to be a key afternoon for Richarlison against his old club as his future in North London comes under the microscope. And Football.London report that the reaction of hardcore away supporters who pay top money to follow their club over land and sea is usually a good yardstick when they try and decipher the true mood and feeling of any fan base. It was all rather flat at times on Wednesday evening, when there were even a few audible groans when the odd Tottenham attack amounted to nothing, particularly in one instance when substitute Xavi Simons turned back and squandered the chance to launch a promising second half counter. But dig deeper than that and there's apparently a growing sense of frustration regarding recent performances, both of which have been rather bland following the conclusion of the international break. Frank is an excellent communicator and undoubtedly a smart, flexible, forward-thinking coach that has already overseen great success in the Premier League with Brentford. Supporters online have raised concerns over several of Frank's press conference comments following the 2-1 defeat to Villa. The Dane insisted the match had panned out the way he had expected. It was a narrow affair won by 2 long-range strikes from Morgan Rogers and Emi Buendia, but the reality is Tottenham should have never allowed the game to escape their grasp. Optically, it was a loss that appeared entirely avoidable. After the 2-2 draw with Bodo Glimt, it was put to Frank that Spurs had dominated their Norwegian opponents on their own pitch in May in the Europa League semi-finals. This time around, it was of course a different story. Frank again acknowledged that he was not overly surprised to see this season's contest play out differently, as he noted Bodo were more aggressive in duels. The harsh reality is that Spurs supporters are unlikely to tolerate this line of analysis forever if results do not improve or at least become more consistent. Furthermore, the Spurs boss did not appear to be overly concerned that Monaco had 23 attempts on Spurs' goal on Wednesday, as it was effectively a one-off. But if it wasn't for Vicario's resilience between the sticks, they could have been left red-faced on the receiving end of a brutal morale-slapping beating. It's undeniable a tough month ahead for Spurs, with fixtures against Everton, Newcastle, Chelsea, Copenhagen, Manchester United and Arsenal on the horizon, and Spurs cannot approach any of these games lightly. Confidence levels are already low, and Frank needs to rally his troops and showcase why he is the right man to drive Spurs forward. Okay, well, here's my thoughts on all those stories today. Firstly, this Opta supercomputer. I've never been one to massively go in for these, but actually I agree with this. You could argue that we are in a false position at the moment. Our league start has been, don't want to be disrespectful to teams, but it's certainly been easier than other clubs. You could even argue easier than Arsenal's start, who've played some big teams away already. Are we in a false league position? Possibly, but the league is the league, and you can only beat what's in front of you. And we're up there because we've either won or drawn those games to get those points. But I can totally see the argument in this. Should we be in 13th? On the flip side, one could probably argue we should be in mid-table. It's weird because of the performances we've put in so far have not been ideal. Started okay, but the last couple of performances, obviously one in the Champions League on Wednesday, I've just not been convinced. So I can totally see this. But get down in the comments. What do you make of these supercomputers that predict things, and can you actually agree with it that we should actually be in 13th? It's a bit of a weird one. It is a bit of a weird one to think of it like that, but I can see that. The story about Richarlison being sold in January, I've said for the last couple of transfer windows actually, the club should look to sell Richarlison and move him on. I don't think you can say 100% that it's been a success at Spurs, although it was not been a total disaster for Richarlison. He's been injured a lot. I just think we need to look further. I think we need to look at somebody else other than Richarlison. And to be fair, he did okay at Everton and he was loved up there as well. So if he does go back to Everton, if they're interested, in my opinion, we should look to sell him in January, of course, but the striker's got to want to move himself. But Everton are getting a player. If this comes to pass, Everton are getting a player they know. And as I say, he knows the club, and I'm sure he'd do very well at Everton. I just always want to see more from Richarlison whenever he comes on the pitch. I don't think he had a great start, of course, to this season, but hasn't kicked on from then. So I think if we can get good money for Richarlison, I think we should let him go if it is going to be Everton in January. And the final story is Thomas Frank already under pressure, according to that article from Football.London. I think there's definitely an element of pressure under Thomas Frank. I think any manager that comes to Spurs is inherent with the club. You know, you're always going to be under pressure unless you win in every game, which of course is not going to happen. The away fans, we could hear during the week in Monaco, they weren't happy. I mean, I'm sure all the fans back home watching on tellies weren't happy. You could almost hear the groans coming from living rooms across London and around the world at some passages of play, like the one that was mentioned about Xavi Simons just turning when he could have put, I think it was Callum Awani running outside him, he could have put him in, but he decided to just turn and stop. And I think a lot of the time with Xavi Simons, I think that's a confidence issue as well. There is a decent player in there. He's just not hitting the heights that he probably wanted to hit and that we all expected him to hit. So, you know, he's a young player and there's a long way to go. It just all does seem a little bit flat at the moment, but let's hope we can we can push forward and get a decent result at Everton at the weekend, because there's a lot of games coming thick and fast now, and we just need to start kicking on. I know we've got injuries. It seems like Bissouma's now had an operation, I read last night. So that's what, 8 or 9 players we've got out, and some of them are really big players and important players that Thomas Frank, I'm sure, would love to have at his disposal. So yes, we've got injuries, but all clubs get injuries. So Frank needs to somehow get this squad ticking and get us playing attacking football and winning games in the Premier League. But get down in the comments, let me know what's your thoughts as a Spurs fan right now and how we've been playing. And anything else you want to talk about, get down in the comments and let me know. And as always, come on you Spurs.